Welcome. I'm Rogers Anderson, mayor here in Williamson County, and as we travel around our beautiful and wonderful county, we try to visit with different people or talk about different issues. And today we have a lady by the name of E.J. Neeley that lives in our community, that is so instrumental, involved in so many things, from Williamson County Fair and the historical village portion to just our community at large. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
As we begin our discussion about the different topics we'll get into, people want to know, who's E.J. Neeley? Where do you come from? How did you wind up here in Williamson County? Were you born here? Just a little bit about your history.
Well, I came to Williamson County, my husband, daughter, and I, for the school system. We took a year of our lives and traveled around Middle Tennessee deciding where did we want to live. And it was Williamson County that kept drawing us back, so that's where we came, and not looked back on the decision one bit. Just a great community. And I was told early on, the best way to be accepted into a new community is to get interested in its history. And that's what I tried to do. And I keep getting in more and more and more.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Well, but before we begin some of the topics of what you're involved in and what your love and passion is for, where did we start life at? In a different state or in a different county?
I was born in Nashville and lived there until 1976 when we moved to College Grove and bought a little over 11 acres. And actually, we tore down a log tobacco barn on the other side of Hartsville, and we had the logs moved down to College Grove, and that's the core of our house, that we have board and batten wings on 3 sides, and we share the little over 11 acres with a herd of deer and turkey and lots of little chicks, and it's definitely a change from my life. As my husband likes to say, I was raised on concrete. I lived in the city, and then to suddenly become living in a rural area was quite an adjustment when I moved down here, but I love it.
Well, and you've seen a lot of changes here in Williamson County. As
Yes, sir.
I moved here away from East Tennessee and located here, and it's just been a wonderful place to raise your family and to work and to worship and do all of the things that are so important for normal, if there is a normal way of life. EJ, I can't help, and I certainly don't want to forget thanking you for the many years that you have been involved in the Williamson County Fair. You and Judy Hayes' face and a few other the ladies and people have almost become synonymous with our historical. We call it a village. It's really not. It's probably a set that is about 2 or 3 times as large as this TV studio. But boy, you can pack in the materials and the educational piece of our Williamson County Fair. As successful as our fair has been over the years, there's an element that people want to know how life was 50 and 100 years ago.
Yes, sir.
And you bring that.
Thank you. We try very hard. The Historic Village at the fair is sponsored by Middle Tennessee Electric. So I have, over the last 3 years, I think it's been, brought in a representation of a clothesline to let people know this is the way you used to have to dry your clothes before Middle Tennessee Electric came along. And I have had the opportunity to witness people who look at aprons hanging on a clothesline. I had a gentleman one year who kept standing and looking, and I finally walked over to him and I said, "Could I help you with something?" He said, "I'm standing here remembering my grandmother's clothesline." And I thought right there, that was worth getting the clothesline put up because it brought back memories. We are very, very fortunate in the Historic Village to have a number of very talented craftsmen who bring to the Historic Village a lot of character, a lot of older crafts that are not seen every day. And it's fun to kind of stand back and watch the young people react to things that they don't see You don't find that on television or on cable. You find it one-on-one with the craft people, and we're very fortunate to have that.
When you think about the Williamson County Fair, it's 200,000 people strong, give or take a few thousand, and I guess I don't know we'll ever really know a hard number because we don't have turnstiles. And the majority of the people coming there, it seems they're pushing strollers.
Yes, sir. We had a lot of families.
We have lots of families. Our community is growing. 45% growth in a 10-year window. We know that most people move here for our public education and the quality of life that things bring. But when people are able to settle in and come to the fair and they just want to remember when,
yes, sir.
They're going to go down to your area.
And we'll welcome them very much so.
This year you had a gentleman, I'm not sure what he's called. I know he can do cane bottom seats or brooms, I think was a little, what a wonderful talent.
Yes, sir. And we have representation from the Leapers Fork community. The wood carvers have been with us every year, and it's just hard to believe that the fair has been going on for 9 years. And as I remarked to you earlier, at the end of the fair, I was still having fun. I kept getting up and saying, okay, today's number 7, today's number 8, but it was watching the families come through, as you've already mentioned, with the strollers, some with 2 little ones in a big stroller, and hearing the parents interact with the children, telling them what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. And it seems like none were not too young to experience the fair.
Well, this year when I went down and visited on a couple of occasions as I make my rounds throughout the fair, you were making potholders. A lady was making potholders. I don't know that you were.
No.
But it reminded me of a period of time in my life when I was growing up as a young boy. My sisters would make these potholders, and of course back in those days, 50 years ago or so, boys traditionally didn't make those, but my mother made sure we could make potholders and make them. I don't know what that little bracket is called, but you weave them in it. A loom. Thank you. And it's just interesting how that brought back wonderful memories for me.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. The lady who comes to show the young people about working with the loom and making what she calls now, because they're a little bit smaller, she calls them mug rugs. And so all the children who sit down around her get to make one, and they get to take it home with them. And that, to see the little kids' faces when this is what I've accomplished was also a special time at the Historic Village.
The latter part of your life has been devoted to saving and preserving and educating a way of life that we are getting away from.
Yes, sir.
It is important to know how to operate a computer. It is important to know the many things that, for the next generation, our children, what they need to know. And no, there probably won't be as many people hanging clothes on the clothesline. The dryers and the density of homes, there's hardly enough room in a lot of the lots to put a clothesline up. But it is important, EJ, that our children in this generation understand where we came from.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the history of Williamson County is very, very special. We have the beginnings of our county, and then we have the devastation to our community when the Battle of Franklin was fought, November the 30th, 1864. And it is good to see that there are a number of people in this community who want to preserve that portion of our heritage. Yes, other things happened here in Williamson County, but I think the Battle of Franklin, especially with the 150th anniversary, I think that is really a big drawing card to not only our county's history, but to our visitors who are coming here, especially to see how we are remembering and commemorating the anniversary. You can't say that we are celebrating, because war is something you don't celebrate. It is the memory of the men who lost their lives on both sides, and what an impact it had on the women that were left here to take care of the farms and the plantations while the men were out fighting. It was really a terrible time, but deep down in my heart, I feel like the outcome of that war was decided before the first shot was fired. I don't believe this country was ever meant to be two separate countries. I think it was meant to be one country. And unfortunately, an awful lot of people had to lose their lives on both sides. And I can see both sides because I'm a descendant of men who fought at this battle. My father's side, Union and Confederate, on my mother's side, Confederate. So I have a little, I guess you could say, more of a balanced outlook on it, which is why I took such pride in serving as its president of Save the Franklin Battlefield for 10.5 years. It was just great to be able to direct, and now it's gone on to bigger and better things, but I was down kind of on the ground floor of it, which was good.
Well, it's a balancing.
Absolutely.
Anything we do, we need those modern conveniences.
Yes, sir.
I like the washing machine and the dryer.
Well, I do too.
I like air conditioning in my home.
Yeah, yes, sir.
As a boy growing up, Mama had a wringer
Yes,
washer.
sir.
The clothesline was the only method to dry clothes. Oftentimes fighting the elements and fighting the birds.
Yes, sir.
As the clothes dried on the line. We did not have air conditioning. Now, we did have indoor plumbing, but we did not have air conditioning until I was in my teens,
Yes,
and
sir.
it was a window unit. But what fond memories we have. And I think there is a deep need for all of us to know a little bit about our history of our family, but also a little bit more appreciation for the way that our grandparents lived in the hard times. And you touched on something that oftentimes we don't always remember as males, the battles that the females fought as mothers and wives when the men were off at war.
Yes, sir.
It was a terrible time.
Lots of times they think on, especially the women that had grown up in the South, as being, I guess you could say, pampered. And that really was, to a certain degree, not true. They had to really kind of readjust their lives when the men weren't there to protect them. And one of the outcomes of the war was the fact that women's role changed in the country. Up until that time, you very seldom saw a woman working behind the counter actually selling to the general public. They were protected. A woman wouldn't walk down the street by herself. She had to have a male companion to escort her and make sure she arrived at her destination safely. So a lot of the roles of women did change as a result of the great unpleasantness that we had.
And you touched upon the big battle, the Battle of Franklin.
Yes, sir.
If you've lived in Williamson County any period of time, you have either read or seen something about that battle.
Yes, sir.
One of the bloodiest battles in that era of time.
Yes, sir.
But it's also a war that defined this country, as you've outlined. But it probably, more so, redefined those folks in Williamson County. We've had both sides of people on the war that lived here in this community.
Yes, sir.
And over a period of time, the progress of our community over the last 150 years has pretty well gobbled up most of that land
Yes, sir.
where the battles actually occurred. In fact, one of the best known schools around in the Tennessee area is the BGA.
Yes, sir.
And that campus was started and on one of the more bloody battlefields.
Yes, sir.
Since moved, but many activities are evolving now to preserve or promote and remember and capture this tourism dollar that comes to town that has this burning desire and passion to know more about the Civil War.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think with the 150th anniversary, kind of in the middle of the throes right now, that as close as we get to the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Franklin, I think the interest is going to grow and grow. And it's really heartwarming to me to see that there are organizations working together to try to reclaim. Yeah, we can't reclaim all of the battlefield, but we can do enough that we can draw national attention to what we're doing here in this county and really put, I think, Williamson County on the map. This is what we have done in the way of reclaiming the battlefield and really preserving the history, not just of the county, the state of Tennessee, and our country. And I think we're making progress in that.
Why is it important to you to be able to accent and point those attentions to that era, that period of time? What motivates, what passion inside of you just wants to reach out and be able to explain that and help people to understand it? What drives you in it besides your immediate family that you talked about?
Well, it really is letting the people know what happened in the past is important, because if you don't learn, there were mistakes made in the past, and you have to know those mistakes in order, one, not to make them again, but to learn this is what happened, and it happened. You can't rewrite it, you can't change it, no matter how hard you try. It's just to make sure that it's done accurately, it's told accurately, and it's, again, as you say, my passion.
Well, when we look into our schools, our public schools that we have now, oftentimes history isn't accented as much as we would like for it to be, and particularly Tennessee history, because we are Williamson County, but we live in one of the 95 counties in the state of Tennessee. And many times, whether it's through the avenue of events such as the Williamson County Fair or through some of the downtown Franklin activities that promote the arts and crafts of our men and women of our community, of making things. A few years ago, we've had blacksmiths out at the fair. I've seen blacksmiths down here. It's almost an art that's dying.
Absolutely.
Very much art that in a period of time in history, it was one of the major employments of that era, from the horseshoes to the weapons that the men had, and all of those were usually made by skilled craftsmen. But at the same time, it is important for us to be able to demonstrate through exhibits such as the Williamson County Fair the talents and the gifts that men and women still today feel and cherish beyond any. I mean, they're surrounded by the Ferris wheels. They're surrounded by the jumping, bubbly things that go on. But there's an era there. We have to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the historic village is setting a precedent in getting that done. We have people who care about their craft and care about passing on the information about what they are accomplishing. We have a lady who is doing bobbin lace, and that's just
doing what?
Bobbin lace.
Okay.
And that is working with a pillow on a little stand with pins stuck into a pattern, and she picks up bobbins that have thread wound around them, and she interweaves through all these straight pins thread. And what you see is an unbelievable, delicate piece of lace. And to see that at a fair is almost unheard of, which sets Williamson County Fair a little special, little special.
But there's a need for that. People are willing to pay for that. And,
right.
And not only the visual side of seeing how something is done, but in our homes, our our moms and our wives and our young people, they want to know more about these things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I was amazed. And an event we had at the fair was canning.
Yes, sir.
Now that is an art that's been around, I would say, is way back in history.
Yes, sir.
Techniques have changed. Pressure cookers are there over the last 50 to 100 years. Bathing jars is a term you don't hear very much. Now, we grew up doing that with tomatoes and beans, and there's nothing any better than green beans in a can. In a jar as opposed to a can. But we had a phenomenal turnout from people, not just women, that wanted to know, how do you can? And how do you do these products? We're seeing an emergence of people maybe not putting out a big garden, a half acre, an acre, like you could certainly do on your land, but they want to know a plot of land, maybe 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 or 20 by 20, that they can raise some basic products and enjoy that. They're entering into it more from a standpoint of good, healthy living,
Yes,
which
sir.
you and I grew up as a way of life. Now, you may have grown up in the city, but I suspect you've had a few tomatoes homegrown out in your area.
Yes, sir, I have. And as a matter of fact, when we first moved down to College Grove, we planted a very large garden. And we discovered that sometimes the garden picks an inappropriate time to yield a great deal of produce. And you can invite your friends and your neighbors to come and pick all the produce they wish, but they had rather have you pick it and bring it to them. And it began to be kind of overwhelming for me. And my husband was still working, he hadn't retired, and unfortunately his work was kind of interfering with his farming. And so I decided, no more of planting the garden. But I have a definite appreciation for the farmers in our community who supply so much of our produce for our community. We're very lucky.
Well, and at our, again, we go back to the fair because it's fresh on our mind. It's just been a few days, weeks ago. But the fact of the matter is, agriculture has played such an enormous part of Williamson County. Just as that great battle that occurred here in the 1860s, farming has been a way of life for many, many years, as we all know. Now, as time goes on over the next 20 and 50 and 100 years, long after you and I were gone, it is important, it's critical that we leave back a legacy that people can refer to and understand, the E.J. Neelys of the world, and what she stood for to promote that way of life 50 years ago, much less in the year 2013.
I'm very fortunate to have been invited a number of years ago to join the board of the Ellington Agricultural Museum. That is a marvelous asset in the way of letting people know what farming was about, what agriculture was about years ago. And I find that I am drawn more to agriculture, even though I'm not planting a garden, but I do want to preserve the farm implements left from the past, to let people know, okay, they now run that farm instruments with computers. But a long time ago, it was hooking a mule or a horse,
Sure.
or manpower just pushing that plow through the field.
And there's some bad history in that period, but as you said, it is history, whether it's
Yes,
good
sir.
or bad. The unfortunate part I never will forget in talking to one of our county commissioners by the name of Mary Mills, Afro-American, very special person, teacher,
Absolutely.
county commissioner, hospital board member, very engaged in our community, and certainly engaged in the black community that we have here in our city and our county. And there were a whole period of times throughout history that were not pleasant for the Afro-American community.
Yes, sir.
It was about slavery. It was about things that weren't equal. You mentioned the woman's role. It was in the 1920s, where women even had a right to go vote.
Absolutely.
They were treated less than, and oftentimes we don't like to discuss those parts of our history, but that has evolved us to who we are today. And we need to know those history because we'll repeat ourselves. In fact, in the global world as we talk about today, conflict is going all about us, and usually it's about religion or it's about difference of opinion. And we need to know that so that we have a ready recollection that we don't make those same mistakes. Unfortunately, we oftentimes do, but we shouldn't. And history is the only way that I know to preserve that. You mentioned something about Ellington. I don't know, I'm going to put you on the spot. We didn't talk about this before. You have an event out there that will be coming up. It's one of my favorite. My grandchildren absolutely love going out there. And it's the molasses. It's all the events that go on out there. Would you happen to know that date?
Music and Molasses, and it will be the 19th and the 20th of October. And it is a very large event. Ellington is, the Agricultural Museum is not known as much as we would like to have it known. And this is a way of us introducing it to the community. We have people come say, I lived around the corner, I had no idea this was here. And it really is a marvelous educational experience. I was privileged to work at the Tennessee State Fair years ago with Mr. Oscar Ferris, who actually started that museum. He took a barn and took a group of ladies, my mother of which was one, and said, we're going to turn this into a museum. And it was told, oh, but this is a barn. He says, but I can see that it's going to be a museum, and it is. It's a great museum.
We have a couple of minutes left, and we have a wonderful, cherished item here in our county at 5 Points. You mentioned a museum. It's often referred to as the Archives and Museum.
Absolutely.
But it's an effort that was started by a lady by the name of Louise Lynch, who retired here recently, another young lady by the name of Amy Saunders, Sanders, that's in our Archives and Museum, doing a wonderful job. But we encourage people to come out and look at that also.
Absolutely.
And enjoy a little of the history, because through Mrs. Lynch's efforts and handiwork preserving and collecting, what a wonderful show to tell.
Yeah, that is a great asset to the community and to the downtown area. And I think more and more visitors are beginning to find out there's something else to see in downtown. Beside the marvelous shops that we have in the downtown area is the museum and the archives that, as you've mentioned, Mrs. Lynch started.
EJ, we got 30 seconds. What have I overlooked that you wanted to talk about or say?
I absolutely love the county and consider myself very fortunate to live here.
And we love you. We thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We are most appreciative of you and Judy Hayes and many other men and women that help put on the historical village and your efforts to preserve our history of Williamson County.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Rogers Anderson. See you around the county at a later date. Have a good day.
It's time we all grow up and accept personal responsibility for water pollution.
I am the river and I flow.
Dumping just 1 quart of motor oil can pollute 1 million gallons of water.
Fertilizers and pesticides pollute our streams. Follow the directions and use these products wisely.
Things we do every day create stormwater pollution, and stormwater runoff is one of the largest sources of water pollution.
Water pollution, it's not the other guy's problem.